Hello and welcome to The Rightest Leftist with Nathan Ogilvie, the podcast for the politically homeless. In this episode, it is a part 3 of the AI Jobpocalypse series, where we've been looking at the AI revolution and how it's affecting real people at work. I've gone through some articles about job-related AI cuts and the CEOs that have implemented and then reversed those decisions. And what I want to look at today is the breaking down follow-up from my previous video of the 3 different scenarios. One scenario being the jobs being completely cut. Then the second one being the AI jobpocalypse. And the third scenario, which I think most have agreed is probably the most likely, that there will be some form of regulation by the governments. And in this video, we're going to have a look at 3 sort of breakdown scenarios from that scenario 3 of what this regulation could look like. And I'll sort of highlight, I again got my friend ChatGPT to sort of look at all the data and put a number on what it thinks. And then I put my number on which of those 3 regulation scenarios are most likely. Because without that regulation, we will be getting that AI jobpocalypse where huge numbers of jobs lost to AI and a huge uptick in unemployment. The timing has worked that our friend Elon Musk, I'm going to hold off on any political opinions about him today and just look at what he said on Joe Rogan, because he recently appeared on Joe Rogan's show. And I'm not set up yet to play clips or anything, but I can summarize in terms of Elon's credibility on the topic. Here's a breakdown of the companies that he's involved with or owns. And in particular here, looking at OpenAI, he was sort of involved in the conception of that, which is the company that owns ChatGPT, which I think at the moment is the biggest generative AI software that's used. It's one of the fastest growing websites and apps as well, if not one of the biggest already at the moment. And he also has XAI, which is in charge of Grok, which I think is only on the platform of Twitter/X. I think you can only use it on that platform. But to be fair, he is quite knowledgeable on AI, despite any other political opinions that he might have. And on Joe Rogan, he did state that the AI jobpocalypse is coming. So also considering as well, richest man in the world just signed a deal with Tesla or got it approved from the shareholders that he will be the world's first trillionaire. It's not immediate. It's going to be over a number of years, I believe, like around 5 to 10 years. And he will be the world's first trillionaire. For anyone playing at home, that's, I believe, $1,000 billion, more than anyone ever needs. But again, I'll keep that aside today. At the very least, he has said that the AI jobpocalypse is coming, and then we need some solutions. I don't necessarily agree with some of his solutions, although he did actually state to Joe Rogan something like a universal basic income or a universal high income, because there are going to be, in his words, thousands of people unemployed because of automation and AI and these technological advances around the AI and machines, that this is the way the world is going and we need solutions, and fast. So I just highlight quickly the job losses. So 65% of jobs currently in Australia, and I believe globally too, are exposed to AI. That doesn't mean they're necessarily at risk of being replaced, but are using some form of AI already. And whether that is just simply that, they use Microsoft, and now there's Microsoft Copilot, things like that. So 2/3 of the jobs already have some kind of AI usage within them. There are some industries where it's much higher. Industries as IT and finance above 80%. I've even seen just the latest report, because obviously these things are still coming out and being updated, that I think especially IT is getting close to 90% or over as well. Automation is already replacing thousands of jobs. We looked at Amazon last time, where CEO Jeff Bezos, who is the second richest person in the world, has said Amazon, there are in the next few years, 600,000 jobs that could be done by people are going to be replaced by robots. So some of those are not job losses. It's just jobs that wouldn't have been created. Now they have the technology. And also a couple of Australian companies like Atlassian and Canva, which I might cover those cases in their own videos, have cut jobs due to AI. And those are a couple of Australia's biggest tech companies. And as well, certain industries and jobs like customer service jobs with these AI chatbots and things that can be digitally outsourced are going to be the things that are most affected. So I'm going to go through the 3 scenarios one by one that if we're going to assume that the government is going to do some sort of regulation, what might that look like and what is the probability of them occurring? So scenario 1, and they sort of step up in terms of how active and agile the government is in these regulations. So the first one is minimal. So I'm calling this one the minimal regulation / mini jobpocalypse. So what would happen in this scenario is businesses continue to cut thousands of jobs due to AI. Unemployment would rise above 10%. And that would come with a large amount of social disruption, like a crime rate increases in particular, because we know crime rate always increases alongside poverty and unemployment, and mental health issues, as well as, I would say, health issues spike as well because people can't afford to live. And then, so in this scenario, the government, it would get to that level before the government steps in with some form of regulation. And in a way, it's like too little too late, because even if they come up with some kind of regulation, the damage has already been done. And it would be trying to reverse the damage that's already been done. So ChatGPT actually thinks it's about just over 50% chance of occurring because of the rapid speed of AI development and deployment in industries and how slow the government is to act, because the Australian government still hasn't got any policies. There are sort of some existing frameworks and acts that can relate to AI, but there's no direct AI bill that directly addresses this. And this is where, again, my criticism of the Labor government, that they're meant to be the pro-worker, pro-everyday Aussie party, I've been told, don't seem to be really taking this seriously at all. So for that reason, I've given it a 70% chance of happening. I think this is just the way it's going to go. And yeah, I'm a bit doomsdayer on it because I'm saying it's about 2/3 chance of happening. But I really, unless the government does something in the next 6 months to a year about this and takes it really seriously. And also the independent, like, I don't have faith in the Liberal Party. I don't think they care. But the Teal and independents, these are the people that could be really pushing for this stuff. And I just don't really see it. So in terms of that, just around when we talk about the unemployment in Australia, this is the unemployment rate over since the 60s. And you can see there have been some spikes of high unemployment, especially in the early 80s and early 90s when it spiked and got above 10%. But that really was crisis mode. And then you can see policies and things were implemented to bring it right back down. The global financial crisis, it went above 6% in 2008. And then recently with COVID, it got close to 8% before the trend turned around as lockdowns and things ended like that. To zoom in a little bit more, this was over the last 10 years. So you can see the COVID-related spike of unemployment. But since about 2015, unemployment being at 6% has slowly fallen. It is slowly increasing again. And it's ticked over 4% as recently as September. And it seems, I don't have the numbers for the last 3 months until now, which is in November. But I think some of this increase people are attributing to these technological changes in big businesses and the unemployment rate slowly ticking up. Scenario 2, which is one sort of the next step up, a once-off AI bills. So the government, they start to take notice of those businesses cutting jobs and the job losses occurring, and they try and get ahead of it. But it's some kind of a watered down bill. They would have some punishments or fines for businesses as well as incentives to transition workers. So, helping businesses invest in that training or funding, or even in TAFEs and things for AI training so workers can be upskilled and transition into those jobs. But under that scenario, there would still be a large number of jobs lost to AI. And if there was some kind of AI regulation agency or an agency that already exists, like the Fair Work Commission, responsible for the enforcement of these laws, doesn't really have any teeth. So it's kind of just an on-paper bill to try and reverse some of the damage. This would be better than the first scenario because at least the government sort of got ahead of the jobpocalypse, and at least, like most other areas where regulation falls short, at least the regulations are on paper, but it falls short on the enforcement of that. And this is where ChatGPT says it's about a third chance of happening, so it's sort of somewhat unlikely. I put a little bit lower at about 30%, but we're kind of in agreement that there's probably a 1/3 chance that this is what happens. And this is where I want to quickly talk about the EU and the European Union have an AI Act, and it actually has teeth because they actually have provisions to fine companies. There's once-off fines, but also like set amounts and a percentage of their annual global annual turnover. So they'll work out how much the business made. And if they start using these restricted AI technologies, and they have a whole list and that's constantly changing, which is what I'm talking about when you need this agile policy, because AI is adapting. You can't really just have a once-off bill like this. The EU is a really good example of they've taken this seriously. I think the bill came out in 2021 and it's got this rollout and implementation process. I might even do its own video expanding on that, because I think that is a great thing that's much needed, where it actually has teeth and businesses have to listen and take it seriously, because if they cut jobs due to AI and they're not justified redundancies and things like that, humans are being replaced by robots, there are actual consequences for businesses in the European Union for that. So that's what I would like to see. This is my dream scenario, a human-centered AI bill. And the reason why I think this is what really is needed is because it would be agile and detailed. So it would be broken down into different industries, because that's what we already know is some industries are more susceptible to it than others, like IT, finance, a lot of these sort of white collar jobs or industries, and where the jobs are a lot of data entry or repeated work, going into databases and things. You can definitely use AI to make those jobs more efficient and faster, but getting rid of whole sort of types of jobs like customer service, that talent, it affects upwards, because then there aren't people getting in as graduates or getting in those lower level positions to work their way up. So in 10 to 20 years, when all the top level executives start retiring, the talent doesn't come through, because the robots can't do that job of humans and progress through a career, because AI is ideally tasks for one thing, or you utilize it within a job, not to replace a person. So it needs to be industry specific, and coordinated with other countries is important too, because this is a global issue, because AI is worldwide and there is that global competition. And the US and China are both, trying to lead that in different ways. There needs to be that coordination, as well as investment in AI literacy and training to help workers upskill in AI. So this is where I do, being the rightest leftist, I do think some of the right-wing ideas of individual responsibility. And we also don't want, I think right-wingers also don't want people unemployed. Their whole thing is to get people employed. It's job seeker. If you're unemployed, the goal is to get you back into employment. We want people working. I don't want mass unemployment as well. So if there are going to be so many more jobs in AI, because AI is being brought in, we definitely workers to upskill as well. And I do think that investment in people understanding what AI is and how to use it, and then to train workers, so people may be already in an industry, or if there are going to be some AI-related job losses that are inevitable, like companies just simply don't need maybe their department of, let's say it's like researchers and data entry, maybe they have 20 employees doing that, and with the efficiency that goes down to 10. So there are still people employed there. Those other 10 people who lost their jobs can upskill for other industries and things like that. So I think that investment in the training is super important, and I don't really see it yet. And I've said there's no meaningful disruption to employment or social order. So if this bill was to be developed, implemented, and rolled out in a human-centered way, we shouldn't see that spike of unemployment or social order with no increase in crime rates or mental health issues related to the job losses. And often those things go together. So if the unemployment rate increases, it doesn't necessarily mean it's related to AI job losses. But as we're seeing with some of these companies getting rid of a few thousand people at a time, like ANZ, there is some relation to AI-related job loss. ChatGPT thinks is about 10% chance of happening, so still very unlikely. I even put it more skeptically at 5%. I just think this is an extremely unlikely scenario because just the way the government is. And I'm going to do a follow-up interview with my friend Jake, who is heavily in sort of the AI, working on a lot of AI different AI-related projects, and get his opinion on it. But I think that the government is going to be too slow. And even though a bill like this is ideal and what is needed, I don't think, especially our Australian government and what I'm seeing in viewing Question Time and getting to know the politicians, I don't think they're going to get it together fast enough to get a bill like this ready to go before the related job losses come in. I think it's going to be likely one of the other two scenarios where it's either the unemployment increases and they start acting quickly and rush a bill through, or the job apocalypse already starts to happen with many thousands unemployed, and then they have to do something because things already start falling apart quickly. One other solution, and this is what Elon Musk proposed, is the idea of universal basic income, also known as UBI, and I usually call it UBI, but I'm happy to explain it because it's been around for a long time as an idea. So really what it is a monthly payment from the government for every citizen. So it's not like social security or social welfare by people who are unemployed. It goes to every single adult over like 18 or older. It's universal, so the wealthy do get it as well, but that's offset by higher taxes. So often the universal basic income programs go alongside higher taxation for the wealthy. So everyday people don't pay more tax, but the wealthy do. So even though they get that payment, which the suggestions are about $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month, I think in Australia it would have to be $1,200 just because of the cost of living. So, about $15,000 a year. Wealthy people would be often worse off anyway because they would pay higher taxes on that. So they'd be getting the payment, but then their taxes offset it. Alaska has one. So they have this UBI where every Alaskan gets about $1,500. It does vary on the year because it comes from like a sovereign wealth fund around their oil, because Alaska produces a lot of oil. And the idea is that it's not like government welfare or dole bludgers or anything like that. It's a dividend because they understand that they call them citizens, but as Alaskans, they should get a share in the wealth of their state. And so for the resources extracted, that comes from the fund of the profits from the oil extraction. And this is what in Australia we just don't have because for whatever reason, and a lot of what do we call it? Manipulation from the media, let's say, or the mindset is that these private companies should be the ones to own the resources, and because they put in the investment and risk to extract it, that everyday people shouldn't benefit from that. And I totally disagree with that. I think Australia needs a sovereign wealth fund, which is basically just any of the super profits from those companies. That oil and the minerals in Australia, it's more coal, iron ore, and precious minerals and things like that. We should be the citizens of Australia. The people should own those minerals and get a percent of those profits, and that's where a UBI would come from in Australia. Now, it has been trialled in a bigger way in Finland. It wasn't the whole country. It was about 2,000 citizens, but what they found was most everyday people in Finland would use it on essential costs like rent, insurance, car repairs, and in a way that goes straight back into the economy. And then they did studies on well-being and different measures, and in almost all areas like health, mental health, trust both in the government and that UBI system went up after the program ended during the trial. And so clearly there were benefits there for just paying people to be citizens as a dividend for the wealth that their country generates. And because one of the criticisms of it is people will just get lazy and buy drugs and alcohol with the money and see it as sort of an extra expense. And sure, some people would do that, but it wouldn't be any different to what already happens. And the other criticisms are, so yes, it is very expensive. It does cost a lot of money for a government to pay its citizens. In Australia, we kind of had one for a little while during COVID. It was called the JobKeeper payment, and full-time workers who temporarily lost their job due to COVID got $1,500 a week, and part-time got, I think, $750 a week, like half that. And even though that wasn't universal because people working didn't get it, that's kind of the premise. And Australia has, by doing that, showed that they could do it because they had that mechanism where it would be Services Australia or Centrelink can get money out to every citizen quite quickly. That's something the government is very good at doing. One of the concerns is it could accelerate inflation. With all that extra money flowing through the economy, costs can go higher. That hasn't been found with those trials, and it doesn't really affect things in Alaska, even though Alaska, it's a once a year rather than once a month. But it would be worth, I would even say let's trial it in Australia and see if it does affect inflation, because it's definitely a valid concern. But if it helps everyday people with getting their lives on track, like people might have a car repair that they need to do so they can get back to work. If that UBI helps them pay for those essential things, that would be a really good thing and would really help the economy. Another one, and this is probably the right-wing argument against it, is it can be considered rewarding people for not working. But what we find now too, if we pair this back to AI, is that unfortunately, I think even in the best scenario, with AI becoming more like a tool, because this is what a lot of people who aren't doomsdaying about AI often say, is that AI is going to just be a tool that supplements workers and helps us with the more boring and menial tasks. And I've already said I use it in my practice as a psychologist to help me with case notes and the boring admin sort of side of things. So I definitely see the benefits. It helps me see more clients and makes my business more profitable because I can spend more time on what actually makes me money and do less boring admin work. But again, I don't cut anyone's job because it's just me, but there's definitely ways that it's probably going to cut jobs. As I said, like if it helps make jobs more efficient, they might not get rid of a whole department, but they may not need as many people. And that's certainly the case. And I do think, again, where I'm probably the rightest leftist and I am quite pro-business, I don't think businesses should needlessly, like we're not banning AI. We're not going to needlessly punish businesses for using AI. We just want what I'm saying is we just want worker protections, and we don't have thousands of people out of work and whole departments like what Amazon's going to do with 600,000 people. Look, they might need to cut 100,000 people over the next 5 to 10 years, which is still a lot. But we need to reduce that as much as possible. And that's where I think a UBI can make up for that, where if someone has to go, maybe instead of full-time, go part-time or become a gig worker, work for Uber because their job doesn't exist anymore, this universal basic income can stop people starving and struggling. And I know people say, well, that's what Centrelink is for, but Centrelink at the moment, the payments are so low, it's like $40 a day or something like that. It's really unlivable. It's already below the poverty line, and it's not enough. And I think we need to switch it over to a system like this, ultimately. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, though, if you are pro or anti-UBI. Last thing, this is just kind of more of a practical thing because I like to try and end on hope rather than doomsdaying, because that's my tendencies towards catastrophizing and doomsdaying. But Forbes had a great sort of a little article about recommendations to AI proof your career, because I do again think there is some individual responsibility that we're now well aware that AI is coming in and is not going anywhere. So I think everyone should take as many precautions and steps as they can to AI proof their career. So a couple of those recommendations is to upskill into those less automatable skill sets. So in most jobs, you can find ways to do that. So whether that becomes strategy, critical thinking and analysis, or leadership, it's always good to look in whatever industry you're in to the areas that aren't as replaceable by AI and make sure you're developing some of those skills. Also learning to work with AI to further your career and boost your salary. So there's so many little mini courses or things. Some of them are like completely free and some of them are like really cheap, like $100 or $200. It's always good to personally upskill yourself in AI, even if it's just a really basic course, because most jobs are going to have some form of it. And then again, those upskilling platforms, the micro credentials, are always good. And I think as well, depending on your industry, not every industry you need to have an online profile, but things like LinkedIn and those certifications that you can put on your resume are a really great place to start, especially if you're in sort of a white collar job or the IT or finance industry. It's always good to get on top of this really early because this is where the curve, we're sort of on that cusp now where AI has already come in and we're using it. But I think in the next 2 or 3 years, between now and 2030, some people are saying 50% of jobs could be replaced by AI at that time. That's probably an extreme number because in Australia, that's millions of jobs. I don't think it's ever going to get that. A government whatever government at the time is in charge for that, which is probably going to be Labor, just can't let that happen. So I don't think the Jobpocalypse is going to be 50% unemployment. But even I think they're going to start taking notice when it gets above 5%, which we're already at 4.5%. So that's coming within a year. But if it gets up to about 10% job losses related to AI, the government, I think, no matter what scenario, are going to have to step in and do something. But you as an individual, for your own career and income, can definitely get started now. So I'll get off my high horse and we'll leave the video there. I'm really interested in your thoughts though. And if you are if you're already seeing it in your workplace or you know of AI job related cuts or have any other knowledge, I'd love to talk to you and have an interview because I want to start having some more professionals on as well who are experienced in the field, because I think this is going to be one of the biggest topics over the next, I don't know, at least 5 years, but more with the technological advancements in the workplace and how that's going to affect politics and governments and what they need to focus on. So my name is Nathan Ogilvie. This is The Rightest Leftist, the podcast for the politically homeless. And let's talk again very soon.